Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
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 Another episode.
Excellent.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us here.
Gary Byrne, back again.
All right. Hey, here we are. Did we hit the
Yeehaw.
applause? Is there applause?
Applause. Woo!
And that's enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Much appreciated.
Hey,
I need to back up, make sure people can see the
yeah.
man of the moment.
Man in the
My
moment.
giant noggin.
Chris Rose, great suggestion. I agree with you on that one.
To
So we're
put
back.
the guest
We're
in the
back
seat so
for-
he can look this way.
He knows what we're talking about.
Oh, my bad.
But not everybody else does.
Well, our
We're-
secret. Our secret.
We're shaking things up, trying
Shaking
something
things
different here.
yeah, and it's
Guys, I got to tell you something. All those views we're getting, it's just me over and over again.
Is it? Yeah, yeah. I thought it was me. Well, all right. We're doing.
You're watching it like
we gotta
50
hit it
times a
more
day.
often.
Yeah.
All right, here we are back for another episode of In the First. This evening we're going to do Bourbon in the First with Gary Byrne, who is back for his third session now.
Byrne and bourbon.
Burning bourbon. All right, so
my phone off.
our bourbon tonight is Still Austin, the Cask Strength bourbon whiskey, which is made in Austin, Texas, and you'll see the link on there. So I've had this before. It's a nice bourbon.
It's very good.
And it's just great conversation. It's the thing I love about bourbon. It is a conversation drink. I like to go around teaching people how to drink bourbon, and sometimes I feel that my real job is not what they pay me all the money to do, is that I am ambassador for the bourbon industry. And I wasn't originally a bourbon drinker. I was a gin and tonic guy. But I had a lot of friends, most of them military people, who loved to drink bourbon, so I started, drinking with them, and now I just love it. I work down in Kentucky, and so I get exposed to a lot of bourbon down there. But what I love about the bourbon industry is that there's so many of these small distilleries who are making these small batch bourbons who are just fantastic. And so here we are. You'll see the link, and you can buy this local, so I would suggest getting it. It's really good bourbon. So we have Gary back with us again. He is the best-selling author of Crisis of Character, involving the Clinton the Clinton regime, and he has a second book, which is The Secrets of the Secret Service.
Which I said I was going to listen to between the last and now, but instead I bought a house and have been extremely busy.
He's been like radio silent. We text him,
Priorities.
and there's nothing from him.
The book is much cheaper than the house, but
Yeah.
It's cheaper
But you
than-
Well, I
live-
do have a nice
you
wood.
can't live in the book.
I got a nice wood burning fireplace now that I've got a little spot
Nice.
all picked out. I can sit
Nice.
and watch it if I ever get it ready. But we haven't talked about the current event, so it is the
we will.
20th of February.
We'll do that. And so I'm Jim Weldon.
Rob Close,
Rob Close.
Chris Baronio.
Yeah, we already
Gary Byrne.
introduced Gary. So,
our favorite guest, Gary Byrne.
our favorite guest.
Yeah.
We've had him back.
Thank you.
Is
for the
that
third-
round
third
3?
episode,
Yeah.
round 3, and then round 4. So today is Thursday, and as we said last week, Thursdays will usually occur once a week every
Near the end
Thursday.
of the week.
near the end, and
Yeah.
it is followed by Friday. However, this week it is not followed by Friday, which is going to be Valentine's Day. The big news today is that Kash Patel was confirmed by the Senate. I will toast Kash Patel.
FBI director.
Woo.
51-49,
Another close vote.
Which was disgusting.
which was disgusting. Kash, let's make the FBI great again.
Yes.
So we've had.
Yeah.
My experience with the FBI is different than your experience with
Yes.
the FBI, but
Yes.
We
I-
both
I've
had-
had some good ones.
you've
though.
had good.
Yes.
I have too,
Yes.
and I've had some not so good ones.
They weren't all bad.
Nope.
Anybody listening to these in order knows that we ended with you dragging one of them across the table. Wanted
They're
to
trying
punch
to,
him in the
yes.
mouth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got a little bit heated.
It
Yeah.
was, but it's
Yeah.
nice when the Attorney General's office says you should have punched him in the mouth.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
they were.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they
that-
were very. Gary Grindler was his name. He was Janet Reno's right hand man. He was very supportive of us,
Yeah.
and he was a physically enormous human being.
Yeah, sounds like it. 6'4". And,
Yeah, he was there.
yeah.
So anyway,
So, but yeah, I like that because I got hurt really bad on the job years ago, and Charlie Earbley was the Attorney General then in Delaware, and he's talking to me, and he says, Jimmy, don't worry, we're going to, this guy, no plea deal, we're going to get him into jail. And he said, but why didn't you shoot the guy? And I said, I didn't have a chance. We were busy fighting, and next thing I know, I got a brick in my face. But anyway.
Is that what
it's nice to
happened?
see that. Yeah. I used to look like Tom Cruise.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
did.
like a whole
I did.
podcast
Yeah, it
right
is.
there.
Now I look
Yeah.
like, now I look like Cal Ripken.
Jimmy's life.
Yeah, Jimmy's life. My modeling career shattered.
So, did you guys also see today that Maricopa County released the final report on the Obama birth certificate? That was quite interesting.
Yeah, very.
I
yeah,
did not see
yeah,
this.
It is not real. So,
So, not saying he's not a citizen or wasn't
no,
U.S.
no,
born,
no,
but that document they presented their final findings as
You know
it's
who
a
said that
forgery.
in the very beginning?
Everyone.
Well, who I listened to was G. Gordon Liddy.
Oh yeah.
he did. He
A
did.
little bit.
G. Gordon Liddy came out, and I used to listen to him all the time.
I
when
did too. I loved his
when
show.
I worked down in Washington.
Yeah.
And I actually got to meet him one time.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, a buddy of mine from the Secret Service was Encounter Sniper.
Uh-huh.
They were friends,
Yeah.
and he called me up one night and he goes, "How much do you like working in the West Wing?" I said, "Yeah, it's great." Why? He goes, "I want you to do me a favor. I want to sneak in G. Gordon Liddy and his family one night." I'm like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
But I flipped the other way, but it never worked out.
Yeah.
I decided that they were right.
What's he physically? What's he? How
Liddy, small guy.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really smart, funny,
Yeah.
and always he's sort of like he advertised himself. He was always sort of switched on, which I am. You know, I'm always looking around, and
Yeah.
and he was. Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was very nice, but anyway, we didn't.
I loved his radio show.
Yes.
God, it was such
And
a
I
good show.
didn't. What made it fascinating was, like, some of the stuff that he wrote, I didn't read when he first wrote it. I didn't start reading some of the stuff about his connection with the Clintons until I wrote the first book. And I'm glad I didn't, because like him and there's this other FBI agent that worked at the White House when I was there. He wrote a very good book at the time, and I'm glad I didn't read those before, because there's similarity. Like some of the stuff crossed over. Like it would have confused me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I would have. So anyway, but yeah, Liddy, and he was no kid when. He was no kid then. He was probably 80
Yeah.
when Obama came forward, right, and was trying to run. And I listened to what he said about the document, and I'm like, he's 100% right.
Yeah.
That ain't real.
Yeah.
That ain't even a good fake.
No. Not.
Yeah, this
not a good fake,
report
not
that
real.
came out, it showed how they took Johanna or whatever the
Right.
original was, grabbed like 4 things off it in a group and dragged all of them at once over and overlaid them onto the Obama one. And it was so perfectly lined up that mathematically impossible to be anything but a forgery.
The other thing too, I think, is the one document I don't know if it was that same document. They came forward with a different document. The font didn't exist.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
that was
I
the other one.
Remember that?
Yeah,
the
I
font
do.
didn't exist.
Font didn't exist. Yeah.
And then
Gary, if you just point that right at your mouth, you can
Yeah,
sit
how's
back.
that? Is that better?
Oh yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah.
And the other thing I remember at the time, I don't want to hijack the podcast, but the other thing I
Oh,
remember,
it's your podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a guest. The other thing I remember at the time was, I can't remember what spokesperson it was for the Obama campaign, but she kept insisting about this hospital and this and that. And then some time goes by, everybody forgets about it, and he wins the election. And the day he wins the election, like whatever time it is in Africa, they have a CNN crew there with cameras on his family, and his grandmother is jumping up and down saying, "I remember the day he was born right down the street."
Ooh, wow. Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
No, I have not.
Yeah,
I have
it
not.
probably
Yeah.
still exists.
Yeah.
This big, heavy-set African woman, in this beautiful garb, and they're all hopping up and down, and they're so excited because they're African.
You finally got an African to become president of the United States.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just not an American,
Yeah,
or wasn't.
Congratulations to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yep.
yeah, those were the things that
Right.
and there was a couple other things that were just kind of anecdotal that, like, my aunt up in Delaware County was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. She worked for the Delaware County. She was the appointed person who does the wills, auditor of wills or whatever, and
Register.
Register.
of Wills.
register of wills for years. And when Obama came onto the scene, I said, "Oh, what do you think about your new candidate?" And she looked at me. She goes, "He's a plant. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody's ever heard of him."
Yep.
I'm like, for her to say that,
Yeah.
that's pretty significant.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
we all got snooker.
Yeah, I feel like we did.
Yeah. The other big news, dominating the news really has been Doge and USAID and all of the crazy programs, and I would say probably fraud. And it looks like, it remains to be seen, but it looks like that a lot of that money that we sent to Ukraine came back into Democrats through their contributions. We'll find out more about that, but
So Act Blue is involved.
Act Blue
This
was
is-
involved in that.
Act Blue is
Well, if you ever looked at Act Blue,
it's like a clearinghouse.
It is a clearinghouse.
Yeah, and
For those of you who don't know, Act Blue is a place you can make donations to
Right.
Democrat candidates.
Yeah.
And there's Win Red on the Republican side.
and it's one of the ones. There's two main. Act Blue was one. I forget what the other one is, but they're feeding that crazy Stacey Abrams down there
They are.
in Georgia, and
Yeah.
they're the ones that are funding all her insanity.
That was through the EPA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some
some
of
of
it
that-
did come from the EPA.
yeah,
You're
Yes,
right.
they found
So-
like a $2 billion set aside for some random
Yeah, exactly.
environmental NGO.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Doing basically nothing.
doing nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
Gee-
taking care of her campaigns.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So before I stop yapping and let you have your show back, I just wanted to point something out real quick. We were talking about G. Gordon Liddy. You know, when we talk about money, $1 million, $1 billion, just so everybody understands how much a billion is. And I
1,000
learned
million.
what's that?
1,000 million.
Right, but
Perfect.
but
There
the
you
way but the way G. Gordon Liddy explained it one time was very simple to me. Like, if I gave you $1 million, it would take, and I told you to spend $1,000 a day, it'd take you about 3 years, right?
Mhm.
If I give you $1 billion, it'd take you 3,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit more money.
That's a little bit more money.
Yeah. So when they talk about trillion, they think they're going to find a trillion or more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. That's a lot.
It's
So,
mind blowing.
Yeah, and there's people out there trying to defend either the theft, incompetency, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, the Democrats are attacking because it is a non-elected. Elon is non-elected who is running things. Well, we really have come to find out that Biden, at least for 2 years, probably most of his presidency was
Mentally
not fit,
declined.
mentally not there. So who was running the country?
Yeah.
It wasn't Biden. It was people who were non-elected. So, but they're not concerned about all of the fraud and all of the waste and all the crazy programs. They're not concerned. And although I do have one thing I want to say, one complaint I have about Elon. You're veterans. I'm retired police. So I always wanted to take care of our veterans. What Elon apparently is going to do is he's going to stop some of the payments to the Revolutionary War veterans, to the veterans of the,
I was
French
wondering where
Indian
you were
War,
going with that. Like, what do you?
the Battle of 1812, those veterans.
Yeah.
The Civil War, those veterans, some of whom have been receiving payments, are not going to receive payments anymore. And that is a concern that we have to have.
I hope all of that comes out. That's going to be some good stories. Like,
It is going to be some
who
good
is
stories.
who is collect? You know,
Yeah, where's
are,
this
are you
check
going to
going?
find out that the 100-year-old grandson is collecting it, or you know?
All of the Doge stuff aside, as an interesting side note, the last survivor of the Civil War actually getting veterans payments died like 2 years ago.
Yeah, which is kind of stunning.
Yeah,
No, it is.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
you think about our American Civil War being so far in the past.
Well, as President
And yet-
Trump said, we have people who are receiving Social Security benefits 300 some years ago before the country was ever founded.
yeah.
Wait,
Well,
wait, wait.
I don't know how they
Civil
pulled
War
that one
ended
off, but-
1865.
Yes.
Yeah, because the first
Yeah.
Memorial Day was 1866.
Yeah.
Which
To,
my family
to
has
connect the
ties
dots really quick, there was an old veteran, and he was getting he was in the 80, he was 85 or 90 or something like that, and he actually married a woman, and she had a kid
Right.
in like 1910, 1920.
So they,
And then that child was a survivor of the veteran, so he
Got
was
it.
able to still get the paycheck.
yeah,
It was like $40 a month. It wasn't
right.
you know
Not a
huge,
whole
but
lot.
it's more the concept of like, wow, that's one generation basically. Yeah, it's
So-
kind of crazy.
All right, well, let's
right.
let's get on to the topic at hand. So the last 2 episodes, and by the way, we have a YouTube channel now, and we've been pushing it out. If you go to YouTube and do a search for in the first podcast, it might be called, you'll see it. If you like when you look at the episodes and then subscribe, you'll every time we put a new one out, then you'll get a notification and you can watch it. So
You got to smash that like button.
smash it, yeah.
Yeah,
Hit it
come on.
repeatedly over and over and over again. Vote early and vote often, as the Democrats would say. So the key, if you go back and take a look, you can see where we left this off, and we left this off with the Monica Lewinsky affair, the Starr investigation, Gary's developing great relationships with the FBI, and then finally he was compelled, as other members of the Secret Service were compelled to testify based upon a Supreme Court decision by Justice Rehnquist. That's kind of where we left it. So what I want to do now is I want to spend, and we're probably going to be maybe an hour, and then we're going to, we'll break and we'll come back again. I think we're going to probably need the time. But what I like to do is I would really like to focus on your second book, which is The Secrets of the Secret Service. A lot of key things in there, and I have a line of questioning I'd like to get into. And then I think after that, if we still have some time, maybe we can go back and do a little more loose ends that you want to tie up.
Sure.
And maybe a little bit about Hillary. So,
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. The book's a great read, and he spends a lot of time talking about the history of the Secret Service, going all the way back to, the Praetorian Guard,
Yeah.
which when Caesar was assassinated, the Praetorian Guard was designated as those who would defend the emperor. But we're not going to repeat everything
Right.
by the book, but it really is a great history of how the Secret Service came to where it was. The discussion or the writing you did on the Blair House shootout,
Yeah.
where Truman was very fortunate that
Yeah.
he wasn't killed, and you talked about the training of the
Yeah.
one officer who had the 45
Yeah.
Tommy gun and who stayed in position, right?
Yeah.
Really great read. I
Yeah.
would suggest
Thank you.
getting that. No, I really was. I was fascinated.
They're good
by it.
stories. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
You also talked about probably the president who had the best relationship with the Secret Service was Eisenhower.
Yeah. He had a very good one.
Yeah. Why? Because it's going to lead to going back to the Clintons, but why?
Yeah. So the impression that my co-writer Grant Schmidt and I got as we were reading it, and from information, was basically because so many of the agents and officers were from the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of them were veterans and
Right.
stuff, and Ike was one of those people. Men just gravitated towards him.
Yeah.
They were so in awe of him. I mean, thinking about what he did. I mean, he had done something that nobody had ever done before. I mean, basically, and this is no slight towards Eisenhower. He had no combat experience.
No, he did not.
He was a very good administrator, and he saw an incredible void. And with that, this is the way I interpreted it. What that void was he was one of the few generals, British, Polish, American, whatever ally you were, that not that he didn't have an ego, he could control his ego.
Yeah.
And he saw through. He knew he would need Patton. He didn't care what George Patton did. He was going to forgive him. He knew he would need him 2 years down the road. He knew he could depend on Omar Bradley. Men loved to be around this guy.
Yeah.
And he had a very good relationship with the Secret Service. Yeah.
Well, logistics is how you win wars, right?
Yes,
Organization
it
is how you win wars.
Yeah.
Probably what most people don't know is that in the effort to develop a highway system or railway system that would connect the East Coast to the West Coast, and the reason why the interstate system is called the Eisenhower, right? It's because as they were trying to figure this out, Ike Eisenhower as a major was responsible for trying to figure out what it would take to get trucks from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Right.
And what's the best routes to take.
Yes.
And that experience was very, very helpful in many ways. But it did lead to a standardization of roadways and the development of a roadway system, which ended up being
Sure.
the interstate system. So,
Sure.
like Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Even numbers run east to west, odd north
Correct.
to south.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
And don't forget too, during the war, we built the Alaskan Highway.
We did.
Which it was a mud hole. It was
Yeah.
a giant, 1,800-mile mud hole is what it was.
Yep.
So yeah, so they had a lot of experience under fire, and then when he becomes president, I'm sure it's more relaxed, and but there's always the threat there. There were some very good relationships between Eisenhower and the Secret Service and the staff.
But you mentioned that while those relationships
Yeah.
were very strong, it also led to some complications.
Sure, it does.
Explain that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a great story. George H.W. Bush, Papa Bush. So
Trained at Wallops Island for World War II.
yeah, that's right.
Yep,
Yeah, that's
down in-
right.
Yep, on the eastern shore here.
Yeah.
Chincoteague, yeah.
So they're in Texas. He's president. They're in Texas, and this friend of mine, who's an agent, who's on his detail. There, he hears the president, raising his voice and not cussing, but and he opens the door. He's in his study, and he sees President Bush sitting on the floor with these shotguns laying on the floor, and he's got some tools, and he's trying to change the choke on a shotgun. And he looks up at the agent and he goes, "Oh, I haven't done this in so long. I forget how to do it, what goes where." And the guy just coincidentally was a hunter. He was he goes, "Oh, the blah, blah, whatever." So next thing you know, they're both sitting on the floor like kids, right?
Right.
Guys, the agent's got his jacket off. They're sitting on the floor. He's got his sleeves rolled up. They got the tools. They're taking the chokes out. There's, and the president's telling him he's going hunting tomorrow with his buddy. They haven't hunted since, he ran the oil company, blah, blah, blah. And the agent looks up and his boss is standing there. He's like, "Everything okay?" "Yep, everything's fine." The president says, "He's just helping me switch out." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take your post." So that's one of the things you have to be careful you don't get too close.
Right.
And then when if and when it does happen, Barbara Bush had this thing for one of the uniform division K9 guys. And when I say had a thing for him, she somehow inadvertently heard his story from Vietnam. This guy was drafted into the Army in Vietnam. And when he got back, he joined the Secret Service uniform division. And so anyway, he was a little eccentric. That's a nice way to put it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and he was a canine handler. He ran a canine dog for the uniform division. And she liked this guy because his story was wherever he was in Vietnam, they were in a horrendous battle, and they thought he was killed. And they zipped him up in a body bag. He laid out in the sun for 4 hours.
Ooh.
And when the Deuce and a Half pulled up with the mortuary service, they were throwing the bags up on the back of the truck. And this one guy was new, and the bag moved, and he jumped, and he said, "Oh, it moved." He goes, "Well, they do that." And to this day, the young mortuary guy, who doesn't know why he did it, but he leaned over and he unzipped the bag, and my friend sat up and went,
Wow.
and so that's how. So when she heard that story, she was sort of endeared to him, and so anyway, one day she invites him to. When George H.W. Bush is the vice president, she invites him to the VPR on Massachusetts Avenue, vice president's residence, for a cookout. And he comes. He shows up with his family, the dog, the family in the government car, and they go to the barbecue, and his family has a great time. And the next day, he gets called up to the chief's office, and the chief's like, next time, have your wife drive separately in your car.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
And you need to notify me so I can tell the director that,
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, they invited me. What is I supposed to do? Be rude and say no?"
Right.
They're like, no, it's fine. So
Yeah.
so that's one of the examples. Like, you have to be careful,
Be careful.
Yeah, so
Fraternization.
yeah. Leon Panetta was one of Bill Clinton's chief of staffs. Very nice guy. A Democrat, but I will tell you, he was a reserve officer in the Army. He was a very nice guy. He was a businessman. He grew almonds out in California. He was a big almond grower.
Wow.
Congressman. Couldn't be more polite. The first year he's Bill Clinton's chief of staff, his wife comes walking down the hallway. It's like 4 days before Christmas, and she has this giant laundry basket full of booze. She walks up, she goes, "Here." And I go, "No, I can't take that, ma'am." She goes, "Leon said you can take it."
Oh.
And she handed me a card, and I opened the card, and it was from Leon Panetta, her, the family, on behalf of the president. Thank you for, blah, blah, blah.
All right.
And the booze was a gift.
Yeah.
And I said, "I can't take this." She goes, "Do I have to go get Leon?" I'm like, No. We'll work something out. So I took the basket. I set it down on the floor, sort of out of the way where nobody could see it, or where nobody would trip over because the halls are pretty narrow. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Okay, this is I know how to do this." So I called up the watch commander, and I said, "Hey, sir, what do you like to drink?" He goes, "Who is this?" I go, "It's Byrne." He goes, What do you open at a bar?" I go, "No. What do you like to drink?" He goes, "Well, I like vodka." I said, "Come over to my post." He goes, "All right." So he comes over to my post. I hand him a bottle of vodka. He goes, "I can't take that." I go, "Go down there and see Leon Panetta." So I gave away
Yeah.
a good portion of it. I
Right.
kept what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then, I gave some of them, I left a couple things on post with notes for the other officers that would come on during the next couple days. And
Yeah.
so,
Sounds
yeah.
like a win-win.
Yeah,
Win-win.
yeah.
Yeah,
You don't
there
want
you
to be rude, But I explained to her, and then she said, "Okay," but Leon said, and that was it. You just can't keep, So anyway,
So there are these experiences, and you also mentioned that the agent that's in charge of the presidential detail, that is a stepping stone to become the director of the Secret Service.
normally, yeah,
Normally.
more likely than not,
Okay.
and it's a big deal.
So I'll say it isn't necessarily a stupid question, but people want to know why.
Yeah.
Why?
So when you're in charge of the detail, your authority is the same as a 4-star general, and not only that, so the authority of the SAC of the detail, that's what he's called, the special agent in charge, and he's referred to as the SAC. And when you say the SAC, everybody knows who you're talking about. When you're in the West Wing and you go, "Hey, the SAC's coming up," you don't have to, which one. You know who it is. It's the guy in charge of the detail. Now, technically, the uniform division, I mean, we're part of the Secret Service, but we're not directly in his chain of command. But you work for him, especially when you work in the West Wing, because that's where his guy is, right? He's in charge of the president, so he's got this incredible authority similar to a military general, and then he also has the civilian authority. And the best way to explain it to you, if they're going, let's say they're flying out, and they're flying out of Andrews Air Force Base, and wherever they're going, they can't take Air Force One, so they take a smaller plane, which is still Air Force One, but right,
Sure.
It's a smaller one.
Yeah.
And on the way, the plane develops a mechanical problem, and they land at this airport. And just because it sounds funny, I'll say it like this. And next to where they park is Donald Trump's 757. And they need the engine off of that 757.
Right.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's Donald Trump. He would say, "Take my plane,"
He would.
or "I am already the president," whatever.
Yeah.
But that's these guys have, and they need that because their job is, no matter what happens between the White House and wherever they're going in the world, they have to keep him moving. You cannot let him stall, because when you let him stall, you're opening the door for happenstance and then anything that's planned.
That's leading into my next series of questions, which was perfect.
Yeah.
Almost as if we
Yeah, planned it.
choreographed this. But
Right.
so you talked about the relationship that some of the presidents have, and I'm assuming that if you have a strong relationship with the president is more likely to heed the suggestions and advice of the
Yes.
Secret Service. But if you don't have a very good relationship with the president, it's probably the counter, a.k.a.
Yes.
Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So believe it or not, Hillary was not an issue, because the agents didn't have to, the senior agents, and then somebody like myself, not because of my rank, I was just an officer, but because of the position I had, you had to tolerate Hillary's behavior at times. She would I probably got dressed down more by her than some of the senior agents.
Right.
But the first time it happened, and I reported it, and they literally physically came to me to talk to me about it. And I was like, it can't be the first time. And they said, no, absolutely not. You handled it well. Keep going.
Right.
So but the relationship, the important relationship is with the president. But that doesn't mean like you need this agent and the director. So you have the director and a deputy director, and then the sack of the detail, right? And those three guys are the three guys that really have to worry about the relationship. But if the first two normally leave it up to the sack of the detail, it's all about his relationship. And they listen, they're honest guys. They have a tough job, but they make it work. They have to make it work, because if they don't, who do you think's going to go, right?
Right. Sure.
But when you get to that level, you only get to the. And I there was a guy that was a sack of the detail. I won't use his name. It's not necessary
Right.
after all these years, but he was one of the biggest dicks you ever want to work with. It wasn't that he was incompetent. He was good at what he did, but he just was one of those people. He felt like he had to grind you under his heel no matter what it was.
Right.
It's not enough that I win; others must lose.
Right. It's not enough. Right. And he was a real, and he shot himself in the foot a little bit with George W. Bush over a conflict. This is actually a good story. It goes along with what you. So they're down in George W. has this big ranch, right? Famous ranch down in Texas, right?
W.
Yeah, and you know that in Texas in the summer it's hotter than you know what, and so they're down there, and it's the first time he's going there like this time frame. I don't know if he just got in the office. I think he did just get in the office. Yeah, because I was only there 2 years with W. So he just gets in the office. He's visiting Crawford, Texas, right? So they're driving in, and as they're coming in, he sees the agents, the officers on post. They have Jeeps or Hummers, they have trucks, but he notices the agents are all in khakis and jackets, and they're dressed like Secret Service agents. And he notices the uniform division guys have like BDUs on, light uniforms, short sleeve shirts, and so he says something to one of the agents, and they're like, "Oh, well, we this is the way we have to dress." So this agent who's in charge of the detail, and he was only there a short period of time. Now, this incident is not what made them get rid of him. He just became too arrogant, and the service, promoted him up or out. Actually, he left and he became. I'm kind of naming him, but I won't. He went and became the ATF director, where within 2 years somebody filed charges against him and he had to retire. So anyway, but while he's in Crawford, Texas,
Nobody will Google that. You're fine.
yeah, I'm sure nobody will, and it's okay. It's not like it's not true.
Right.
So so George W. asked him to come in when and he says, "Hey, listen, I want these guys dressed differently. I want them lighter. It's who cares? We're out in the middle of the Texas desert." And he listened to what the president had to say, and then he looked him in the eye and he said, "Mr. President, the way my men dress is up to me, and I'll decide what's comfortable for them."
Okay.
And that went over like a fart in church.
Bet you it did.
Because set politics aside with the Bush family and what we might know now, they were nice people and they care. They did care. They were genuine, kind people. So anyway, that's like one of those things where the guy's asking you to make your people a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you say that's a great idea?
Yeah.
Of course, or what he should have said was, the clothing is on the way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
I met W. I got a picture with W.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah.
Very nice. I mean, whatever
Yeah.
you can say about his politics.
Yeah, but
certainly a nice.
yeah,
guy.
I had a few interactions with him before I transferred. Always funny, always nice,
Yeah.
and he had a really good sense of humor.
He did.
Yeah.
So getting back to the relationship aspect,
Right.
and now coming back to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, because of the fact that Monica wasn't the only individual.
Right.
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 And Bill was looking for opportunities,
Sure.
which would be a problem since he has Secret Service with him.
Yes.
And we won't focus on this, but you mentioned the one time when Monica was trying to get there, and he was
Yes.
busy with another lady.
Yes.
But you did talk about the time that he was trying to leave. Well, first off, he hid himself
Yeah.
underneath a coat in the car, trying to sneak out of the White House. If you want
Yes.
to talk about that for a minute.
Bill Clinton tried to sneak out of the White House to go to
Dirty
the
dog.
hotel in Washington, the giant JW Marriott, to meet a woman.
Yeah.
Now, I know who it was he was meeting. I won't say. Do I say it in the book?
No, you do not.
Okay.
You don't.
Yeah.
Okay. I found out sometime late. I mean, not too long after that, by accident.
It would be one hell of a scoop if you dropped that bombshell
Well,
here.
actually, it's not a complete secret.
Yeah.
But anyway, so so I'm working outside. I'm working the Oval Office Post, and it's just I don't know, it might be a Sunday night. It's just a very slow night. Like, he's been president a little while. One of his right hand men who came from Arkansas, they were childhood boys. His name is Bruce Lindsay. He's an attorney, and his main job is to take care of Bill Clinton.
Right.
So,
In more ways than we would have thought an attorney would do.
well, no, not because they were
Okay.
boys together.
Okay, right, gotcha.
And
Got
Bruce Lindsay, one time when they first got there, and he bizarrely shook my hand like I was somebody he should be concerned about knowing. But he was a nice enough guy, and he shook my hand. He said, "I want you to know that I've been friends with Bill Clinton since we were children. And the last thing his mom said to me was, 'You take care of my Billy.'" I'm like, "Okay," like on my hand.
Right.
But so Bruce was a very small guy in stature. Anyway, so Bruce is clearly trying to help Bill hook up with this woman. So he had this, I think it was either a Buick or an Oldsmobile. So anyway, I'm on my post, and I don't know what this happened, right? So I'm leaving my post. I get relieved. It's about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I come down. I'm going out the West Wing doors, basement doors, and my buddy who's on the post there inside, he's standing up, and he's like, I looked at him, he goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Shit, you're not going to believe this." I go, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Go out there and listen to what they're talking about." I said, "All right." So I walk out, and I see the sack of the detail, the D-sack of the deputy sack of the detail, special agent in charge that night, the shift leader, and another senior Secret Service guy who was probably at home when this happened.
Right.
And came in really fast. Anyway, they're all standing there. They're talking to the president and Bruce Lindsay. And as I walk out, this sack looks at me, and like, I don't know why, I stopped. And I just stood there. And as they were talking, they all sort of turned towards me, and like, so I just stayed there. And as I'm listening to what's going on, and I look over and I see this officer standing there, and he's got a raincoat in his hand. And I'm like, and there's Lindsay's car, which I didn't realize was Lindsay's car, but I saw Bruce. And then, so this officer's standing at his post. He sees Bruce Lindsay's car coming out, and he's up in the booth. It's elevated. And he looks out, and as he's looking out, he can see underneath the headrest, the space of the headrest. And whatever's behind the headrest moves.
Yeah.
So he takes his finger off the gate, and the gate stops opening. He closes the gate. He walks up to the car, and Bruce won't roll down the window. So he just stands there, and he knocks on the window, and Bruce rolls down the window, and he goes, "You have to back up. There's somebody behind you in your car." And he's like, so they back up, and all of a sudden the coat moves, and there's Bill Clinton hunkered down in the back of the car trying to get snuck out.
So
There's a YouTube video here I'm just playing for people to watch. I'll put the link. But
is it?
it
Okay.
references your book.
Yeah.
Secrets of
Oh,
the-
okay. Yeah.
there's a bunch
So
of
like,
Clinton
help us understand, like,
Yeah.
where is it?
So-
where does one park
so
when
it's-
you go visit the White House, such that like the president can
Well,
just
you work at the White
hop
House.
in your back seat?
Yeah, so Bruce is parked on West Executive, right? So here's what happened. So him and Bruce were hanging out, and they had pre-planned this, obviously, right?
Right. Sure.
So, well, let me finish this part of the story. So that happens, and then when I walk out, like, so I'm standing there, I'm thinking I should have never stopped moving, I need to
Yeah,
get,
right.
but I
Just-
can't
just
really,
like the president.
yeah, and I couldn't have, and I looked over at the sack of the detail, and I said, "Do you need me here?" And he said, "Don't move." And I thought they want witnesses, more witnesses.
Yes, they do.
So I stood there, and as they all kept talking, and I put together what happened, I'm like, he wants me to take Bruce Lindsay and beat his ass. Like, that's what I was thinking. Like,
yeah.
they want to tune him up. That never happened,
Right.
But that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, they want to take Bruce out back and tune his ass up,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so I stood there, and they went through everything that happened, and I'm looking around. I'm like, it's like I'm in the twilight zone here. So as we're standing there, I kind of scoot around to where the other officer is. I figured we should stand next to each other, And I go, oh, he's looking at me. He goes, "This is crazy." I go, "Dude, how's your night going?" He's like, I got to get out of here. He goes, "I can't work here. This is insane." I go, So what I found out was they pre-planned it a little bit. They hung out together. They were walking around it was a really, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday night. It was a very slow night. There was nothing going on. And they were just hanging out. And so either they asked for, or Bruce asked the detail to loosen up a little bit, give them a little bit of room. They weren't following them around. Like, they weren't right on top of them. You can't get out pretty much without us knowing it, right?
Right.
So they loosened up the perimeter on them a little bit. They were inside. And when they realized they could walk away, they did. And they walked outside. Now, when they walked outside, the officer sitting there, of course, saw them and just assumed the detail, correctly assumed the detail was outside waiting for them, or part of the detail. That's just the way it works, And so when they got outside and they realized nobody was really watching them. When I say outside, they were on West Exec, which is closed off on both ends. The old executive office building, or Eisenhower building, is on one end, and then the West Wing, and it's pretty protected. And so he got Bruce in the car, and they
That's absolutely bonkers.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's not the
yeah.
only time, though. I guess he tried to sneak out quite a few times.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, like, what was he thinking of doing on the other end?
How to get back in?
Well, no. Like, how are you going to get into a hotel?
Oh no, they had that all figured out.
Yeah.
There was a movie.
Well, you got to
in
get
the
back in
90s.
too. though.
Well, yeah, right.
Well, that's no problem. Then you just pull up to the gate. We're going to let you in.
Yeah.
We're going to
yeah.
be stunned.
Hey.
What was that movie in the '90s where they had the president got sick or
Yeah,
something happened to him, so
so-
they brought in
Dave.
a guy.
Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, yeah.
The
So,
double. So,
yeah, and they
Yeah.
snuck out and remember that there was a whole scene where they got pulled over
Yes.
by a cop and
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah, we're a singing group.
Yeah.
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 So, on those lines though, there wasn't the only time.
Right.
And this leads to, there's a roundabout way I'm getting to all
Yeah.
this. This leads to the fact that you don't want to stop anywhere. There were times when you would have to take Bill Clinton to locations where you had not properly vetted. You didn't have all the details set up. You didn't even, and the one in particular I'm talking about was the accident, right? Where one of the officers was seriously injured, T-boned, because they were racing through without letting the Metropolitan Police know about it.
Right.
So it's a smaller caravan trying to get to some location because Bill wanted to meet a lady, and it was not properly vetted. It wasn't. You didn't have intersections blocked.
Right.
And
No motorcycles.
no motorcycles. Metropolitan Police are like, what the heck's going on here? And then because they couldn't block the intersections, and I was a motorcycle cop.
Yes.
And I've done escorts.
You're an
And they told
expert on
the
it.
Secret Service told us
Yes.
if your bike goes down and the limousine, we're going to run over you.
Get out of the way.
There's no stopping.
Yes.
That's the point I'm
Yes,
making here.
right.
No stopping, and this was
Right.
not controlled. Ended up with a T-bone accident, and in the last car because the intersection wasn't controlled,
Right.
and one of the officers was severely injured.
Yes. Yeah. So the service starts putting pressure through Bruce Lindsay on they start putting pressure on the service. The president wants to start going out at night to visit people, whatever, and in a way, some of the request is legitimate because I was with them one night.
Yeah, you mentioned some of it
Yeah.
was. Some of it was.
Some of it was legitimate. But so what happened this night was, I'm trying to think of his name. I can use his name. His name was Colin McInerney, one of the nicest guys you ever met in your life. He used to be counter sniper. They grabbed him, said we're going on an OTR off the record. And it was a very short motorcade, no flashing lights. The service, the sack of the detail, they buckled to the pressure from the Clintons. And it's not the first time, and it wasn't the last time. They buckled to political correctness at times, and so what they did was they agreed to shorten the motorcade. They weren't going to inform the press. They were going to not have motorcycles, and so they're going through this intersection, and the last car that Colin's in, it's a I can't remember if it was a Metropolitan car that he was. The reason Colin was there was he had a handheld metal detector, and for whenever they got where they were going, or so, or he could have been driving himself. No, he was driving himself. He was driving the car because the hit came from the left. So he's driving the car. They're going through the intersection, and somebody who's going down the road
with a green light.
With a green light, and hits the last car, Colin, and severe head injury. Back then, they used to refer to them as closed head injuries.
Yeah.
There's hardly even any bruising, but his brain is so swelled that he's messed up for a long time. So the story gets out. Of course, everybody's livid. We know exactly what happened, and the agents. The high-up agents, the director's office, are trying to squash what happened because they don't want it to get out.
Right.
And, of course, it does get out. And when the service starts and the staff starts steering the blame towards Colin, somebody who works at headquarters who knew this guy decided that was enough, and they took all the reports and copied them and gave them to some reporter.
Yeah, because he had to use sick time. They weren't even going to cover.
Oh, yeah. Well, he won out eventually.
He did win out eventually, but that's what happened.
Did I put in the book how he left?
You nicknamed him
now.
Reverend?
Yeah.
Reverend, yeah.
Yeah, so this is why one of the things I really respected about him. So I met him right after he came off a counter sniper. We're standing post together one day outside for some event, and we're talking. I'm like, God, this is the nicest guy. I said, how long have you been here? It's like 10 years. And I'm like, why'd you leave counter sniper? And he's like, it just gets old. And I go, well, okay. So anyway, we're working post. A couple more days go by. We're working post again. And, we start talking. He starts talking about, his beliefs and religion and everything. And he's very devout. And all of a sudden, I turn to him and I go, did you decide you could not take somebody's life with a rifle? He goes, yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And he said, I have no problem doing regular police work. He said, I think I would hesitate and it would cost somebody else their life.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Fascinating.
and I said, well, did it come, and we talked about it. He was not embarrassed by it. And he was a tough dude. He was very athletic, but he just felt like that he would hesitate. He got to the point in his life where, defending himself or defending me in uniform while we're doing police work, he didn't have a problem with. But a long distance shot,
Right.
the way that he felt like he was putting the entire apparatus in jeopardy. So when it came up for like his 3-year evaluation, he goes, hey, if you guys you want to open some spaces, I'd move back to the regular uniform division, and he did, and that was that. So.
Yeah.
So that's why he was in
Very
that
honorable.
car.
Right.
Very honorable.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So that's why he was in that car that night. So
Yeah,
I didn't
very
see him for months, and we knew he was having a lot of health problems and everything. And again, they tried to screw him. And
They did.
so eventually he gets a lawyer, and the local FOP lawyer, and when they get to a proceeding, like the judge, this happens a couple times when people in the uniform division file suit. The judge is flabbergasted. Like, why are you even here? How is it that, you did this happened and they're not bending over backwards.
How did we get to this
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, and so eventually he wins a lawsuit, and I don't know what.
The FOP, by the way, is for the Fraternal Order of Police.
Yes, and we're not, the uniform division of the Secret Service is not unioned, and we don't have representation. But if you work at the White House or you're in the uniform division, you can join the FOP. There's just no collective bargaining. But I will tell you, they will break a leg trying to help you. They did it with me with the Lewinsky thing.
Right.
I have nothing but praise for them.
Well, that's good because I'm
Yeah.
a member of the FOP.
Yeah, I know. I'm
I
telling you.
negotiated contracts.
Yeah, I'm telling you, some of those guys took some great risks for us.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, so one Saturday, this is like at least a year later, maybe even longer. I forget exactly how we wrote it in the book. I'm sure my details in the book are more accurate, but so it was at least a year gone by, and somebody called. I was on post, and they called me from the Northwest Gate, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm staying post." He goes, "When's your next break?" And I said, 10 minutes, like come out to the gate. I'm like, okay. He said, "Somebody here wants to say goodbye to us." I go, "Oh, okay." So I walk out there, and there's Colin. He's got a brand new Nissan Pathfinder, all jacked up. Looks like it's like an army vehicle. He's got a $3,000 Cannondale mountain bike on the rack on top,
wow,
yeah.
you know. And I'm like, "Oh, so I guess you're doing okay."
Yeah, everything got
So-
worked out. Yeah, that's
so,
good.
So his headaches never went away.
Mhm.
He stopped taking all the pain medication because he felt like it was just causing him not to fun. He was not, the regular guy. And
Right.
so the headaches never went away. He felt like they just sort of went to the back of his head. His vision in his left eye returned.
Mhm.
That was one of the things, like from the trauma, like
Right.
he was almost blind in his one eye.
Yeah.
And there was no impact on the outside. It wasn't like he got poked, So anyway, but yeah. So I mean, I haven't talked to him in years, but I do know that he got another government job that was much easier and less stress out wherever he wanted to go. So
Yeah.
I hope he's taking advantage of all the work that's been done on TBI and stuff.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
recently,
and it's
last year,
funny.
too.
You should say that he's not the third person that I know in my life that like that should be on that or is on that train from head injuries from law enforcement and
Yeah.
Yep.
so
Sports. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
sports.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I almost lost my eyesight in the right eye, but I did have severe damage to the eye, orbital blowout and stuff. But the reason why I mentioned those is because
procedural.
well, procedural number one, but all of these things are having a dramatic impact on the United States Secret Service.
Huge morale,
Huge morale problems.
causing huge conflict
Between
between the officers, the
Yep.
agents.
Yep.
It got to the point where shortly after that accident with Colin, they asked for an officer to jump in and off the record, and the guy said, "I'm not going."
Yeah.
And you can't not go. You can't do that. So the watch commander, got involved and said, somebody's going if it's not you, and if it's not you, I don't need you here.
Right.
So he went, and but there was a lot of friction. It caused a lot of heartache, and of course, everybody knew that the Secret Service was either doing it themselves because they were jerks, or they were doing it because of pressure from the administration, and they kept and once they buckled on that, they buckled on these other things.
Yeah.
That caused a lot of trouble.
I could absolutely tell.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to Marletti
Sure, go ahead.
in a second.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go through a timeline here because when you take a look at that timeline and all the stressors that had already been caused by the Lewinsky affair, by Bill Clinton doing these things, and you have this accident where your procedures, you're trained, you know what the procedures are, you know what you have to do, you know that you never want to stop anywhere.
Right.
All of this is against all of your training,
Right.
and you have to deal with it. But then you have this timeline. So we'll get to Director Marletti in a second, but he comes in on June 6th of 1997. He's the 19th Director of the United States Secret Service.
Right.
Interesting story too, because he actually saved Clinton in the Philippines.
He did.
You want to talk
Yeah.
about that real quick, and then we'll get back to the
Yeah.
timeline?
Yeah. So Bill Clinton's in the Philippines, and I remember the trip. I didn't go on the trip, but I remember it very well because um, three of the Navy stewards, traditionally Navy stewards that take care of the president, are Filipino men. Now, over the years, that's been Navy. They're all
Sure.
Navy,
Yeah, yeah.
Navy mess.
Long history of
Right.
Filipino cooks in the U.S. Navy. Yeah.
So during I'll make this quick. During the Second World War, I forget the admiral's name. He's visiting Roosevelt, and he brings this Filipino aide that he has with him. That's his steward. And Roosevelt comments on how nice he is and how well he's dressed, and it sounds a little sordid today, but basically Roosevelt or the admiral looks at him and goes, "Mr. President, do you want a couple of them?" And so that's how the Navy transferred some stewards. They
Interesting.
started doing the mess in
Yeah.
the West Wing, right?
Right,
You know,
Yep.
Wow.
and it's a very professional, cool service. Anyway, so Bill Clinton's going to the Philippines, and he's purposely one of the things he's doing. He's going for whatever reason, but he's also taking these three guys because he's going to meet their families. They've been taking care of him for years in the West Wing, and he's going to meet their families in the Philippines.
Right.
It's really
Very
cool.
nice gesture.
It's a cool thing, right?
cool.
Yeah, and they're flying on Air Force One with them.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's like, yeah. It's not like there's not room. I mean, come on. So anyway, they're in the Philippines, and so what a lot of people don't know is, well, a lot of people know a little bit. Like, the Secret Service gets help from the military. You can't do it without the military. They do the communications, secure communications. If we need a big boat, it's the Navy. If we need a small boat, it's the Coast Guard. Whatever
My MOS when I was in the Army, I think drives the Beast.
Yes.
88 mics.
Yeah. So
Transportation Corps.
right. Most of the communications are done by Army Signal, but it involves all the military entities, and then helicopters, Marine One, and so anyway. So one of the groups that helps the Secret Service because of their natural born mission is Delta Force. So Detachment D, that supposedly doesn't really exist, precedes overseas movements. They have. The truth is, I don't know exactly what they work hand in hand with the Secret Service. They look for things. They communicate with us, and they are a standby if there's a disaster. And so, anyway,
That all came from MacArthur being in the Philippines and stuff.
Well, yeah, and there was also an incident with Nixon when Nixon was the vice president for Ike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got it wasn't the Philippines; it was
Yeah, he was almost
South America. Yeah, it got really crazy.
Yeah.
Nixon was literally, I don't want to change stories here, but this thing with Nixon was literally begging the agent not to kill these people outside the car because they were overrun.
Yeah.
And they were, so anyway,
Nixon wanted to be the lead vehicle.
yeah,
And then
they got overrun.
And they got overrun.
Yeah.
They blocked the road.
It was a
yeah.
train wreck. So back to the Philippines. So Bill Clinton, one of the things he's going to do there is he's going to have an off-the-record meeting with a former head of state from another country. Very common thing. Nothing sinister
Sure.
about it. So wherever they're going, they're whatever island they were on, and then particular island, and then wherever they were going, you have to pick 3 routes, right? You want to pick at least 3 routes, but you're on an island, right? So anyway, so you can see the dilemma there, right? So
We
anyway,
got air, water.
yeah. So they have no, that is true, right?
Yeah.
So wherever he's supposed to meet this former head of state, they're supposed to take the motorcade, and there's 15 minutes cut out that they've weeded into the schedule so the press doesn't know, because they don't, the press doesn't need to know everything. They try to keep, there's no need them, whoever this guy is, there's be insinuations of why they're meeting, and so anyway. So 10 minutes before they're getting ready to leave, President Clinton, motions to Lou, whatever they're doing, to Marletti, and goes, are we good to go? And he said, yes, sir. In 10 minutes we'll leave. And so 2 minutes after that, they get a signal from the Delta platoon or whoever they were. I don't know what group they were, but and the way it works is they they send Marletti a message, and it's a coded message. And Marletti reads the message, and he walks over to the president and goes, "Yeah, we're not leaving. Not for another 15 minutes, and we have to take another route. We're going to be late."
Yeah.
You know, I will notify the Secret Service people at where we're going, and he did. But Clinton was pissed off. He was mad. Whatever. So when they got to the car to leave, like, he dressed Lou down pretty good, and was all pissed off and everything. So they get to where they're going, and he has his meeting. Everything's fine. Clinton's calmed down pretty much, and and he says, "Do you have any information on why we had to change the route?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I do." And he goes, "Well, what was it?" He goes, "Well, they found a 25-pound bomb on a train bridge,
Right.
and it would have destroyed the whole motorcade." And he's like, "Oh, well, what do you say then?" Right?
Hey, good call.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So he went from zero to hero.
Yeah.
And Lou Marletti, listen, I have, there's things I didn't like about him, but I would tell you at the time when I was working with him, and when I met him, I was a brand new recruit. He was the sack of training.
Mm-hmm.
I ran with him almost 3 or 4 times a week for 3 or 4 weeks, and I didn't even know what he did.
Yeah.
I would stay after training and run more because I needed to run more, and I needed to do pull-ups, and he happened to be in the locker room at the same time, and we went out together. And so we started, and, like the third week we're jogging, and I go, "Hey, what is it you do here? I keep seeing you around." He goes, "Well, I'm in charge of training. I'm the sack of the detail." I go, "Should we be together?" He goes, "Yes, it's fine."
Yeah.
And and he sort of he was a good guy.
Yeah.
He was the Vietnam War. He joined.
Yes.
He became a 18 Delta. He was a medic in the Green Berets.
Yep.
Wow.
He couldn't
Yeah.
run fast enough to where the trouble was. And when he got out, he used the GI Bill. He went to school up in Scranton, got his degree.
Yep.
And and listen, nobody's perfect. He was good at his job. He saved Bill Clinton's life.
Yeah. He
Like
did.
Bill Clinton or not, nobody wants. Most people don't want to lose a president.
Gary, has anybody ever told you that your life resembles the character Forrest Gump at all?
Yeah.
The amount of,
Yeah, but they usually come from the other direction.
yeah.
they usually come from the other direction.
See what you did there.
So, but
Although
yeah,
Tom Hanks not so good in the news lately, but yeah.
but Marletti, who
Yeah.
distinguished military career,
Yeah.
and you say that really a great guy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and this is where we're going to talk about his timeline.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna take a break, and then but before we take a break, I'm gonna do a lead in
Yeah, sure.
because I want everybody to realize that the next session they want to find out what the answer is to the lead in.
The fourth episode with
So
Gary.
yeah, the 4th episode.
Sure.
So Marletti comes in June 6, 1997. You talked about the incident where he saved Clinton's life. On January the 17th of 1998, the Drudge Report breaks
Right.
about this affair with Monica Lewinsky. On July the 16th of 1998, the Rehnquist decision is issued. On September the 9th of 1998, the Starr Report is issued, and then the impeachment occurs. So essentially, sadly, for Director Marletti, from that 1907 moment until September of 98, where you have the Starr Report and then the impeachment, I couldn't think of any more dramatic turmoil that a man had to face in running an agency. But what I'm also thinking about more so is during that critical period where the Secret Service is the ultimate task of protecting the president, and I don't care what the president is,
Right.
an assassination of a president is never a good thing.
Right.
That had to be tremendous stressors on the agency to have to deal with that over a year time period.
It was incredible, and I was sort of at the point of it because I rose to the top of the people, and then it didn't take us long to understand that, and this is where one of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way about Lou, but I also realized that they had no choice. So you've got Marletti and about 9 other executives underneath him that were all on the Clinton detail, probably more than that, probably close to 12 or 15. They were all in the detail. They knew what we knew. They knew
Mm.
what Judge Starr wanted to know,
Right.
but they also wanted to keep their careers. So as Starr was doing his investigation, and they discovered the uniform division, and then I talked about the log books.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and the
You're right.
treasure trove of the uniform division.
Right, and then they realized, and the Starr investigation didn't care who they hammered, questioned, but they were going to get somebody.
They were.
So they served us up in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They made it look. They sort of were trying to protect us, but what they're really doing was protecting themselves. And at the time, I saw it pretty much like I see it now. I understand why. It's just that I realized that I was at the shitty end of the stick, and so were my
were.
coworkers.
You were.
And my coworker. And listen, I made out okay. Some of the other people did not.
Yeah.
I mean, in the uniform division, typically, it's expensive in Washington. You have to live 50 miles away, Maryland or Virginia. It's expensive lifestyle. You need good cars for transportation. You have kids; they're expensive. And so to make it work, like a lot of people, you got to work a lot of overtime. And the overtime was there, and then all of a sudden, because of Bill Clinton's behavior, you can't work this
You're
overtime.
not getting that. Right.
And then you're being harassed about your job. You're being, it's insinuated that you're incompetent. And then, during the research for the second book, we found the book. I can't remember that. It's the book that was written where Marletti, he interviews Marletti, and Marletti tells him the story about the Philippines. It's like a 1,500 page or 1,200 page book. I think 9 people read it, but it was called not the Age of Innocence. It was anyway. You know what? I'll remember the next one, and
I'm looking it up. I'll find it.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
It's a huge book.
That's why he's good. He does all
Conflicted
these
Innocence or Confessions of Innocence?
No.
Ringing a bell? No.
No.
I'll keep looking.
So the I can't remember the name of it. So anyway, so there's all this pressure going on. We're being interviewed every day. We're not doing our regular jobs, and then everybody else who worked there, all these agents that knew what we knew, that were sort of being protected, the junior guys, because they pushed us forward, they were almost hostile towards some of us. Like they were freaking out.
Right.
Because they didn't care what happened to us. They were worried about what they experienced and have to talk about it. Because now it's not so funny. And listen, what I'm saying is not I was the same way about some of this stuff. I'm like, this is so bizarre, and who behaves like this? And this guy's supposed to be an adult, and whatever. And then all of a sudden, like I said, when Judge broke the story, 3 years had gone by. I thought we dodged the bullet. I really did, and naively. And so anyway, I'll tell you one incident. I'm in the gym during all this. I'm on my way home. I'm really beside myself. I decide to stop and work out. So I'm in the gym and I'm lifting weights, and these 3 agents are in there, and they start, and we work together, and they kind of start busting my chops. Just stick to your story, blah, blah, blah. I go, I can't talk about this. Just leave me alone. And I kept working out. And the one guy kept on me. And he said, I want to know who you're talking about in there. I said, it's none of your business. And they kept on me. So finally, I got pissed off about it. And I didn't say anything else. I just left. So the next morning when I went back to the headquarters, and I, went in for the debriefings and the, what are they doing to me? Their depositions, right? So I pulled the Secret Service lawyer aside, and I handed him a piece of paper with these 3 guys' names on it. And I said, if I don't get an apology from these guys by the end of the day for what happened in the gym, it would have been Sunday, the day before, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to be harassed. Like, go through this. And he goes, what happened? And I told him, he goes, oh, I'll fix this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, a couple of days later, somebody handed me a note that it would never happen again and blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
So, I don't know. Another couple weeks goes by. I'm in the gym again. They're in there. They're like, dude, can't believe you ratted us out. We were just busting your chops. I go, oh, no. That's okay. We fixed it. He goes, what do you mean? I go, I gave all 3 of your names to Judge Starr. And they're like, you did not. I go, I could do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I said, right now I could probably shoot both of you, and the Secret Service would blame it on you. And, they're like, and we had a couple words, whatever, and that was it. But it was crazy. It was very hostile.
Yeah.
I was very uncomfortable around everybody. I felt bad, and I was. What most people didn't realize at the time was I was trying to separate myself from the other uniform division guys because I knew what I had experienced would detonate everybody.
Yeah. But the problem is that in an already stressful situation,
Yes.
this is added stress.
Yes.
And the problem which you allude to in the book with Moraletti is that him or his advisors took a position to defend a principle of the Secret Service, but not a legal authority of the Secret Service, which is not to divulge the information of the protectee.
Yeah.
That had to be resolved in a Supreme Court decision by Justice Rehnquist, which then gave you the freedom to do what you had to do because you are a federal law enforcement officer. And maybe if there was other advice,
Yeah.
some of that might not have had to appear.
That was you're talking about the protective function privilege they tried to invoke, which would have been similar to you can't compel a wife to testify against her husband. You can't compel my doctor to tell you what I told him, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the way they framed it up was in doing the job, the agents, especially the agents, but the agents and the officers at times have to be in such close proximity that the presidents, they do talk like you're not there.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's fine. They have to. They're managing the one of the most important countries in the world, which
The most
The-
important.
yeah,
country.
No, number one.
Yeah,
We're number one.
yeah, that's what I meant. But I was looking. I'm trying to look at it from. Let's say you live in Canada,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're pissed at us.
The 51st state.
Yeah,
right.
you're pissed at us right
Hockey
now.
that's for sure.
So, but anyway, so I mean, you're managing the most important country in the world, and without it, most of the country will collapse.
Yeah.
Little did we know we're actually paying for all the shit. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Right. U.S.
That's another
ID.
story.
Right.
Yeah,
That's another
that's
story.
story. But so anyway, so yeah, it was a bad ideal, but when they first brought it up to me, and they literally did present it to me, not just to me, but to the other officers and agents, like they thought they had knocked it out of the park. And when they told it to me, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, you're not really a lawyer, Gary. But,
Yeah.
so be careful what you say. And I was like, so I lean over, I go to the Secret Service guy, I go, is there any precedent for this? He goes, absolutely not. I said, is this your ideal? He goes, no. I said, oh, okay. So, what was I going to say?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what they went forward with. And so they literally had to argue it in front of the Supreme Court. And I actually suggested to them, sort of naively and kind of dumb I actually said to them one day, I go, let me ask you something. What do you think would make more of an impression in the court? A government attorney trying to argue this, or me and 2 or 3 of the other agents, and one of the UD officers who's a female? Like, that's unprecedented. I said, the whole thing is, we're talking about the president's wang.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
We are. We are.
So it's a little, we're past unprecedented,
And hopefully never again.
Yeah. I mean,
Agreed, agreed.
yeah, I we're going to have to discuss the president, his man juice in
Yeah.
anyway.
Well,
Real quick, the book name, was it Surprise, Kill, Vanish,
No.
or was it American Virtue?
American Virtue.
Death of American Virtue
Yes.
versus
All right.
Starr.
Yeah.
That was by
Does it say how many pages it was? It was insane.
it doesn't. Ken Gormley.
Yeah. About this thing.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I read the whole thing.
as we wrap up this episode,
Yeah.
that's the New York Times bestseller. A very good book.
Thank you.
And all over the internet, anytime I search anything,
Secret
like your name
Service.
keeps coming. No, you
Oh,
keep
yeah.
coming up. Yeah.
Right.
This is not the New York Times bestseller.
No.
This is a fantastic read.
Thank you.
I get
Yeah.
nothing out of this other than the fact that I read this. this is fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting aspects about this, which Gary is expanding. But I'm going to tell you, I would suggest you could there's any number of ways you can get this book,
Yeah.
but I really suggest getting because I
Thank
thought
you.
I thought
fantastic.
this is a fantastic book.
Thank you.
The cliffhanger,
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
March 4th of 2015.
Yeah.
We're going to end it there.
Yeah.
Something very important happened, which kind of alludes to a lot of other problems, because what we're going to talk about in part of the second episode, and maybe we'll have even more, which would be episode number 4, we're going to talk about accountability, the structure of the organization, budgeting. We're going to talk about those issues, and if we have any more time, we'll talk about some other issues.
Sure.
But that March 4th of 2015 incident is an unbelievable story, which just tells you a lot about the problems that we have with accountability, and
Right.
and not just in the Secret Service, but with really many organizations, but I think in the federal government itself.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
All right? So,
I'm on the edge of my seat.
yeah. That hopefully everybody will, and we're going to release this in 6 months. So, at writer strike and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that concludes this episode of In the First, Bourbon in the First. And remember, take a look. We will drink this in the second episode too, for episode number 4. But remember, Still Austin Bourbon, and
Stretch the legs. Come on
In
back.
the First with Gary.
Cool.
Byrne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.